It says, God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about him. Why was God concerned? Can I tell you, there was one reason why he was concerned for them. Because he made a covenant with their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he promised them the Holy Land and promised them freedom and victory and prosperity. And now the children of Israel are not going through any of that stuff. They're having hardship. And you know what God says? I remembered them. What was happening, the children of Israel were groaning. They were crying out to God. You know how they were praying? God, have you forgotten your covenant with us? Have you forgotten your promise to us? See, they're not simply whining and hoping that the wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the oil, the grease. But what they're saying is, God, you made a covenant. And that's when God came to the rescue, because he doesn't remember you because of you. He remembers you for Christ's sake. It is Jesus that causes God to remember us. See, so the sure basis of knowing that God is going to come to our aid is the covenant. But the trouble with American Christians and Canadian Christians, and also the trouble with European Christians, we all came out from the West. And in the West, we weren't so familiar with blood covenants like the Middle Easterners were. The Africans, the Asians. They knew more about covenant. That's why Christianity is the strongest in continents and in countries where people are familiar with the blood covenant. You go to Africa, my goodness, this preaching, the Africans grab a hold of it. It's so powerful. But in America, it's constantly criticized. You know why? Because in America, they don't know blood covenant. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by this. God is a sovereign God, which means he's free to do whatever he wants. How many of y'all believe God can do whatever he wants? He's sovereign. But you know what the blood covenant does? It binds the sovereign God to his word so that he now becomes obligated to help the person he's in covenant with. Now you say, oh, Pastor, I never heard of such a thing. Go to Genesis chapter 15. I'm going to show you this right out of the scriptures. Genesis 15. Because here in America, Canada, and Europe, Christianity is quite weak, and I believe it's weak for a reason, because we're not blood covenant minded people. Now, we believe in God, but our belief in God is that God is sovereign and he can do whatever he wants to do. But wait a minute, what if he doesn't want to help you? Well, if he don't want to help me, that's his choice. What if he doesn't want to heal you? Well, you know, God can heal. Maybe he makes us sick. I don't know, whatever God wants to do. It's up to God. See, and some of you have that theology. It's up to God to do what he wants to do. And that sounds good, but it's actually not biblical. Now, let me show you this here in Genesis chapter 15. It says in verse 8, God had just promised Abram the land, what we call the land of Israel. It was called the land of Canaan at that time. Now, God just promised Abram, I'm going to give all this land to you. Now, what is Abram's response? Notice in verse 6, it says, Abram believed the Lord. So did he believe God? Come on, I'm asking the question. So he believes. Now, some of you say, well, that's sufficient. No. Abram knows we need to go one step further in this belief and in this promise you're making to me. So if you look at verse 8, but Abram said, O sovereign Lord. Now, is God sovereign? Which means, as a sovereign, like a king is not subject to subjects, is he? He can do whatever he wants. Subjects do not put laws on kings. Kings put laws on subjects. No one can bind kings and say, king, you must do this. Now, if a good king, a benevolent king, he looks to help people, but he's not obligated to help. If he doesn't want to help people, he doesn't have to. He's a king. That's what makes someone sovereign. Now, God just promised Abram the land. But Abram also knows God is sovereign. And he's king. And then every king, if he wants to, he can change his mind about it. Because he's king. You getting this? But now watch what Abram does. But Abram said, this is verse 8, O sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it. Well, now, Abram, God just told you. What do you mean, how can I? You believed him. Yes, God believed him, but he still wants to go further in this. I want to know, how can I be sure? You know what Abraham is asking? He's saying, God, are you willing to back up your promise in blood? Are you willing to make a blood covenant with me? Because if you make a blood covenant, you then cannot, as a sovereign Lord, back out of it. Because if you make a covenant, you have to keep it. And Abram, who's the father of faith, who teaches us everything about what strong faith is looking for a covenant. And you know what the trouble is? We have a lot of children of Abraham that stop at verse 6. I believe. But then there are the word of faith bunch. How many word of faith bunch do we have here? These are the bunch that says, It's not just about believing in God's faithfulness. It's now understanding covenant. And Abram says, how can I know? You know what he's saying? Sign on the dotted line. And you know what God does? Look at verse 18. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants, I will give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates. You know what, Abram? He got what he wanted. He says, God, how can I be sure? God says, there's one way we all know, is if I bind myself in covenant. If I agree in covenant, then you know, as the sovereign Lord, I cannot back out of it and change my mind about it, because I'm not the Lord to change my mind. And the blood covenant makes me keep my word. And he made a covenant. And that gave Abraham the absolute assurance that without a doubt, he was going to inherit that land. All because of that blood covenant. Now, it's the same thing, to a certain degree, when we make agreements. Have you ever bought a car at a car dealer? Now, we got some car dealers here in our church. God bless you. We love you. But we know sometimes the hard tactics, okay? And it happens. I mean, because that's what they're in business, to try to make deals and get people to sign on promises. And we've all had a car salesperson say, you know what, I'll tell you what, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this for you, and we're going to do that. Really? That's wonderful. Could you put that in writing? Oh, you can trust us. How many of y'all know, unless they put it in writing, they're not going to keep it? Because they're not in the business to give oral agreements. They're in the business to put everything down in writing. And so the moment they take a pen and they say they're going to do such and such, you know what happens? The moment they sign and you see in ink what they're going to do, you know what? When a salesman signs and or the manager puts in ink what they're going to do, I do not even care if the salesperson is honest or dishonest at that point. It doesn't matter to me. They can be the biggest crook, the biggest liar. They can be an adulterer. They can cheat and lie. They can do everything. But you know what? I know when they put it down in writing, they're going to keep it. Because they care about their own preservation. And I just have to come in with a lawsuit and slap it on them. And before you know it, they're going to change their mind they're going to make sure they kept what they promised to do, because it's in ink. Are you with me? See, and what Abram is saying is, I know, God, it's not possible for you to lie. I know human beings can lie. However, despite the fact I know you cannot lie, I'm going to ask you to come in and sign on the dotted line that you're going to do this for me. And you know what God did? What I love about God, he comes in and he makes a covenant in blood. You know what he's saying? Is, Abram, I'm so sure I'm going to keep this word to you. I'm going to prove it and make it confirmed by signing it in my blood.